All right, review number 3. So this is a reflection on the Two Writing Teachers blog. Specifically, we'll begin with the words you write first are anyone's words. The URL, most of them line up, but the URL calls it Your True Voice. And I think that's an important distinction to make here. Because what Stacy, I believe it's Shubitz, was saying on September 18th when this was published, is really a reflection on her journey to learning how to use voice correctly in her own writing. A professor of hers shared these words with her. She said, "Don't write anybody's words. Write the words that are precisely your own." And I think the word precise is key there, because the anecdote that the author then shares, that Shubitz shares, is of her uncle dying and of the, not obituary, excuse me, the eulogy that she writes. What I guess I gained from this is that she, in writing it, she talks about how at first, she was listing his accomplishments or whatever, and it read like an obituary, which is why I fumbled over that word a bit. But actually, she needed to write a eulogy, and so she wanted to make it a little more poetic, and she wound up doing something a little bit less traditional. But what she learned is that revision of writing, rewriting, I believe is what she calls it, actually improves voice. And really the only major insight I had from this post, it was somewhat short and I guess not really dense, more anecdotal. That's something that it really is key in this blog. It's a lot of anecdotes, a lot of stories that kind of have a point, but it takes up a lot of space to kind of make one general point. But what I got out of this is that revision should not stifle creativity, and it should not be engaged in a meaningless fashion, centered on purely grammatical proofreading. What it should be done, how we should engage it as teachers, and then as students, we should encourage our students to engage it as a part of the creative process, part of their ability to communicate. Editing and rewriting actually is supposed to help students use words more effectively, communicate clearer, and it's not just about proofreading, but actually about honing in on exactly what they want to communicate and communicating that properly. And so when they do that, when they embrace the editing process, they actually are enhancing their voice, enhancing their ability to communicate. And it's not often presented that way. So that's really a very simple insight, but that's what I got out of Shubitz's article. The words you write first are anyone's words. Second post here, teaching students to self-monitor. Let me go ahead and pull it up very briefly just so I can take a look as well, in addition to my own notes. This one was written August 28th, 2017 by Melanie Meehan, M-E-E-H-A-N. And, similarly, somewhat short. This one had some length to it, but again, it just kind of pointed at a few particular ideas that she uses in her classes. She's kind of recommending that other teachers use. The one that stuck out to me is just the term taking inventory, and how I defined it is really, she begins. I'll just say this first. She begins with kind of an anecdote again of her own writing process and how she kind of mentally focuses, and she talks about how she sits down to write, and when she does, she fills her coffee cup up, and she, takes a drink, and she kind of plays around on her computer a little while, checks social media, checks her email, plays some free cell, I think she says, plays a game on her computer real briefly being the key term here, and just kind of centers herself into that mode and does exactly what she needs to be an intrinsically motivated writer forthcoming. And then she sits down and writes, presumably, the blog post that's before us. And when she uses the term taking inventory, she's encouraging her students to do the same. She's giving her students a free space of a few minutes to sharpen pencils, get a drink, kind of even walk around the room probably and shake out any stress in their life. Go ahead and, just any small little adjustments they need to make. Now, I think that's somewhat limiting. That's one thing that I got from this, is that when you're working out on your own, at your own pace, in your own home, like I am right now, you're free in between the vlogs that you're recording to click around on Facebook for 2 hours. I could re-record this and nobody would know. But when you're a student and you have a select amount of time in class that you have to then use up, and the teacher is obviously motivating you to use it in a particular way, you need to do it properly, and so you don't have a whole lot of time to, as they say, dilly-dally or dawdle around. So I think it's somewhat limiting to say, oh, well, you can only use X amount of time, but at the same time, I understand why, because of the limitations of the class. And so she just encourages the inventory thing, but also says that teachers should be taking inventory of their students. And so not just giving them that free space, but then they themselves are actually, when the students are learning, using the free space their own free space to monitor their learning.